Michigan's Supreme Court has just rejected an attempt to keep Donald Trump off of the 2024 Republican primary ballot. That is upholding a lower court ruling. So this had been an appeal to the unsuccessful previous attempt to keep him off the ballot, and the Supreme Court has weighed in saying they are not going to block him from the Michigan ballot. So obviously this moves in the exact opposite direction of the recent Colorado Supreme Court ruling that did bar him from the ballot, or will, pending Supreme Court decisions. Remember, it was paused, but bear in mind, back in November, a Michigan district judge ruled that Mr. Trump was allowed to remain on the state's ballot, arguing that neither the Secretary of State of Michigan or the courts had the authority to determine whether a person was eligible to run for office or to remove candidates. I mean, arguably that's what the 14th Amendment is about. Maybe they believe that that is only the province of the Supreme Court to decide, but the state Supreme Courts are still supposed to be bound by the US Constitution. So it seems like a bad argument, but that's where they went. And the Court of Appeals in Michigan upheld it, and then now the Michigan Supreme Court. So at that point, back when it was at the Court of Appeals, they said the only event about to occur is the presidential primary election. But as explained, whether Trump is disqualified is irrelevant to his placement on that particular ballot. Basically saying, we're not really ruling on whether he should be able to run in the general election. But right, when it's the primary, it's not our place to step in. And it's interesting, that was not a thing that they focused on in Colorado, although arguably, yeah, you could make a major distinction between the primary and the general election. The general election is the election. The primary election is kind of a private organization sort of thing. It's big, and it's been raised up culturally to the same level as the general election to some extent. But you could certainly make a distinction between those two when evaluating Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, I think. So that seems fair. The Supreme Court, by the way, in Michigan did not give really any reasoning for this. They just said, we are not persuaded that the questions presented should be reviewed by this court. They didn't sign it. They didn't say what the vote was. It was one paragraph, and they're moving on with their lives. So Francesca did not agree with Colorado. What do you make of this? How do you think this affects the path going forward for this area?
I mean, I like sort of the angle you're taking in terms of you can understand that I guess the general is the actual election. But truly, for me, the Constitution sounds like you can't run. You can't run for office. I mean, maybe it's shall hold no office, but effectively, if we are to abide by the Constitution, if we're to create laws around the Constitution, you can't run for office, right? If it's your name, and then, oh yeah, asterisk, like insurrectionist, like I was, but you can't, because in no world could you actually hold an office. So you can't aid, abet, or give comfort to, all that stuff. Abet, excuse me. But the real thing is, like, we have to understand how serious this is. Like, I don't expect Michigan to bar Trump from the ballot. Yay, Colorado. We'll see what happens with the Supreme Court. But the fact that, this amendment was specifically designed after the Civil War, and when a racist Confederacy that wanted to protect its right to own people tried to secede from the Union, and then, however many American casualties ensued. Like this is a right-wing movement, and the legacy of that right-wing movement to continue to subjugate people, to treat people like second-class citizens, to bar people from their voting rights, from their human rights, from their civil rights. That legacy is Donald Trump. And the fact that we are even dealing with a right-wing movement today is because we've never healed from the wounds of the Civil War. We've never had a proper reconstruction. Black Americans have not been given, put reparations aside, but a true chance at being equal citizens in this country, from housing to education to to anything, to running for office, to holding office as the Reconstruction intended. So it's very serious. This is about white supremacy. This is about our inability to look back, to heal, and to change from the Civil War, and arguably from this nation's founding.
I mean, I agree with basically everything you said. The only thing I would maybe tweak is it might in the end be too kind to say that they want many groups to be treated as second-class citizens. I'm not sure that they want them to maintain citizenship for many people. But other than that, I do agree with you. And you calling back to the sort of the origins of the 14th Amendment, like some of the Republicans, like Vivek Ramaswamy said, like this obviously doesn't apply because the 14th Amendment was about the Civil War, which, by the way, that's not how the Constitution works. If they wanted it to only apply then, it wouldn't have been a constitutional amendment.
Exactly.
The Constitutional Amendment, once it's written, is written. But even if you wanted to make that distinction where, hey, we're the MAGA movement, that was about the Civil War, maybe put down the Confederate flags then. If you don't want to be connected to that, stop venerating and worshiping that failed attempt to ruin America, maybe. Now, Donald Trump is very excited about the fact that Michigan has not followed suit with Colorado in ruling to bar him from the ballot. He said that they have strongly and rightfully denied the desperate Democrat attempt to take the leading candidate off the ballot, blah, 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 pathetic gambit to rig the election, blah, 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 has failed all across the country, including in states that have historically leaned heavily towards the Democrats. Colorado is the only state to have fallen prey to the scheme. The 4-3 Colorado Supreme Court decision, which they themselves stayed, thus keeping me on the ballot as we go to the US Supreme Court, is being ridiculed and mocked all over the world. Blah, 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 something, something crooked Joe Biden, blah, blah, blah.
Violently destroying everything in sight.
100%. Here's an idea. Like yeah, I know, again, the apocalyptic language.
Who's the X-Men that just looks at things and destroys?
Cyclops, I think, is where you're going with that. Yeah, I agree. I often think about Cyclops when thinking about judicial decisions. But yeah, here's an idea. Since Colorado ruled and made an argument that you could agree or disagree with, and I think that we've attempted to be very fair and nuanced in our evaluation of it. And I continually play devil's advocate for people who literally want to end American democracy, which I probably shouldn't do. Maybe we'll regret it in the future. And now Michigan hasn't done that. And as you say, many states, including Democrat states, haven't done it. One could take away from that it is not a purely partisan exercise. Different judges are coming to different conclusions about something that is not explicit or clear.
Yes.
Rather than, well, when it's Colorado, it's clearly George Soros has done the conspiracy. No, we're working through complex, difficult judicial subject matter effectively. And the Supreme Court, their main role is to weigh in on things like this, and they're gonna do that. So stop freaking out about it, maybe. That's what I would advise.
I mean, we haven't had a lot of attempted coups, right? I mean, and again, it's so true. But like, well, it wasn't actually a civil war. And you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure you stormed the Capitol building. Like, and again, this is the thing, shoe on the other foot. If a bunch of leftists, radicals, people of color, like we're the ones doing that, you're damn right that they would be barred from ever running for office again or for the first time. That's just, now we have insurrectionists, again, Jan 6ers who are getting into politics and are allowed to do so because of the way that we soft glove Confederates, racists, and psychos in this nation. We always have. We handhold them and we say, this will make it better if we just appease this monster, give him a little bone to gnaw on, he'll be fine. No, lock him up.
Yeah, well, I will also remind everyone, including if there are any conservatives, perhaps Representative Green watching, I will remind you that Donald Trump, after he lost the Iowa caucus in 2016 to Ted Cruz, tried to have that election, or the caucus, I guess, nullified because he said that Ted Cruz had cheated. So in that case, he was perfectly happy to take someone off the ballot ex post facto, I guess. He also tried to get Barack Obama barred from running because he pretended that Obama wasn't a citizen because of something birth certificate, something Muslim. So again, this guy who is now continually bleeding about how unfair it is to apply the 14th Amendment in a way that I think is at least arguable, has repeatedly throughout his career tried to have people barred from running for office. I know that no conservative will acknowledge that because again, they don't operate on a system of principles. It's all what benefits me and my side, and then I'm perfectly willing to totally reverse it as soon as it hits someone I hate. So Don't expect any consistency out of this. And by the way, Free Speech for People, who in this particular case with Michigan is the organization that was pushing for him to be denied, said that they're disappointed by this. They're also stressing that this decision isn't binding on any court outside Michigan, which is obvious. And we will continue our current and planned legal actions in other states to enforce Section 3. Obviously, all of this is leading up to the Supreme Court deciding. So, just hold on to your butts for that, I guess.